Well, welcome. My name is Mike, and I think I found a bus. The only downside is it's on the other side of the country. So basically, for the last several months, I've been stalking eBay, OfferUp, Ritchie Brothers, GovX, all kinds of sites looking at buses, trying to find a decent candidate to turn into an RV because I'm just not satisfied with what's out there. So I think we have one, but like I say, it's on the other side of the country. But my intent of this is to chronicle my experience in this project. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to get into the decision-making process. There's a lot of other good channels out there that go into what you might want to consider. I've just decided I'm going with the coach-style bus, and what we're going to go look at is a Prevost H3-45. So let's go see how that turns out. So here I am coming into Charlotte, North Carolina. Very beautiful. I've been to North Carolina twice, and both times I just was amazed at how beautiful the country is. I was just glad it was daylight. I'd been up probably 20 hours at this point, just anticipating how this day was going to go. Was glad to see this airport because I knew I was at least close, but was just eager to get on the next flight and get to go look at this bus that I was fixing to purchase, hopefully. But Charlotte is definitely a rather large airport. It is not double negative. It is definitely not Atlanta, but it's still pretty good sized. And I was trying to find another little sub airline called Contour, which wasn't even on the directory, but I'm finally able to find where I was supposed to be. So after 5 long hours of sitting in Charlotte, the next task was to get to the Shenandoah Valley Airport, which is basically north, going from North Carolina to Virginia. And then from Shenandoah Valley Airport to where the bus was about 15 minutes away. But that was a long 5 hours. So this is Landmark Tabernacle, and that there is the bus, and that's basically where she was when I went to go get it. So as you can see, there's a railroad track right here. This is the only way in or out. So that was our first hurdle that we had to conquer. Basically, I drove the bus around this circle here a few times to get a feel for it, because I will admit driving a 102-inch wide bus is slightly different than a 96-inch wide semi-truck that I'd been driving forever. So there was a little brown pants factor involved. But yep, that's how we got started. And I came across this outfit, which I believe is based out of North Carolina. It's a Holiday Coach and Auto Sales. But like I say, they're a broker, which I was much more comfortable with that, because you put a deposit down, you go and look at it. If it's up to your liking, obviously you can purchase it. If not, you don't lose all your money. You lose the deposit, but to me that was much more of a swallowable pill, so to speak. Because you go on auction sites or anything, you own it, and you got to figure out how to get it off the lot if it doesn't run. So, like I say, this was the outfit, and this is what it looked like when I got there. You can definitely see it from space. It's a very busy wrap, but the wiring was tidy. I like that. You can definitely tell it's been around the block a time or two, but the bus is in pretty good shape, especially the electronics on it. I didn't see anything grossly out of place. Little trick on the baggage bay doors here. I can tell you this whole driver's side, none of the locks were open and the keys broken. So I've since fixed all that. But, marketing, I got to give them props. It did need new tires, which we're going to see. But they were very upfront with everything that was wrong with this bus before I even hopped on a plane. Like I say, they were very, very honest, and that's, to me, I can appreciate that. It's a 96. I know it's not going to be a brand new bus. There's going to be things wrong. I was just mostly looking for rust damage, frame damage, things of that nature. As long as it rode, start and drove, I was going to come home with it. Same thing with these baggage bays on the passenger side. They were all locked and the key was broken, except the very front one. But it was enough to get me home, so I'm okay with that. Actually, a ton of storage. It's the whole reason we went with a coach. Well, not the whole reason, but a good reason. And Derek, the owner of the bus here, definitely went above and beyond. Was very, very straightforward with what he knew of the bus. He wasn't the driver or the mechanic. He just was the owner, but he was very helpful in getting me out of here. As we'll see later on, there was a pretty significant obstacle right from the beginning. The air system on this, the brakes worked fine. The secondary air system, which runs the airbags for the suspension, were very slow to pump up, and there's a set of railroad tracks that I had to get over. We weren't sure if it was going to make it or not, but obviously it did, because we're having this video. So here you can see the railroad crossing with the picture of the truck getting stuck there, which was my fear, was getting this bus stuck on those railroad tracks, because that I've seen plenty of videos on how that can go south real quick. However, with some assistance from the owner, I was able to go across this at an angle, kind of encroach upon that dirt road there right next to the yield sign, and was able to get the bus over this little hump. This picture's really not doing it justice. It's a pretty good dip. So of course, right after purchasing the bus, this was my first stop, Harbor Freight in Harrisonburg, Virginia, just to pick up anything I thought I might need. Like I say, my plan was to pick up the bus, go to a KOA, kind of go through it a little more in detail, and going to need some tools for that. So of course I went here and spent a nice little chunk of change, I'll have to say, but I didn't want to be unprepared for, as much as I could be. This was, I'm 3,000 miles from home. So this was definitely an adventure, and I'm flying solo on this one. So this was the first stop. Now, I must confess, I did do a lot of Google Earth stalking when selecting where I was going to stop. And I could tell just from this parking lot, I did not want to try and negotiate a bus through there. However, up here, I saw there was this side street, and I could easily park the bus right next to that tree, and that's what I did. So I definitely recommend doing your research, because driving a 45-foot bus kind of limits what you can get into. So I was very thankful I did some reconnaissance, so to speak. So now we're at the second stop, and I must confess my reconnaissance didn't help me as much here as I thought it would. In looking at it, Harbor Freight's just right over here, and I saw this road coming in, and well, it seemed like I should be able to negotiate this parking lot pretty well, but this parking lot was deceiving. I could get on the main street right here, but I could not make the turns to take over, some unused portion of this parking lot. So I actually ended up coming clear over here to the gas pumps and parking out here. But I knew I needed a Walmart. I needed a sleeping bag and, some of the other essentials. Cords. Like I say, I was staying at a KOA, and I didn't know what this bus had, so I was trying to make sure I could take advantage of the electrical system at the KOA. And again, I didn't know what was wrong with the bus. And what I found, this stop right here took me a lot longer than anticipated, because by now it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's a Home Depot right next to it, which I didn't know what I needed yet, so I didn't hit that. I'd planned on it, but again, I didn't have enough time to really go through the bus and figure out exactly everything I needed, so I was just trying to get prepared for my my stay. Not to mention it was very cold, but I was able to get the bus out, which was a little more difficult than getting it in, just because it got busy. So again, this picture is from Google Street View. I was coming down this road at dusk, and I took this snapshot here to illustrate the second obstacle I had. This road is the same width as the bus, basically. If you have your left tires on the yellow line, they're just on the pavement on the right-hand side. And unfortunately, there was a car coming from the other direction. And out of habit, I started to scooch over to the right and managed to put the steer tire off the pavement here. And as you can see, about halfway up the picture, there's those culvert pipes. And I did see my life flash before my eyes as I was coming up to this culvert, because that hill starts to pitch down, and I didn't want to steer too hard to the left and end up rolling this dang thing within, a couple hours of purchasing it. Luckily, it did. I gave the steering wheel a little nudge. She came over to the left just enough, and I didn't end up in the culvert. But yep, that was a brown pants factor of 10. And again, these pictures are during the day. I was coming in here pretty much at night. It wasn't quite dark, but it was dusk. It was very dim, and trying to tell which one of these three roads I was supposed to take was a little challenging. During the day, I can clearly see the KOA sign right there, but I could not see that. So I did roll the dice, and I did pick correctly. So I've stayed at KOAs countless times, but for some reason, driving this bus into the KOA just seemed a whole lot different. Now, mind you, I've had motorhomes before. I've had a 40-foot fifth wheel. The current RV I have is a 35-foot bumper pull. All of which seems so much simpler than driving this bus into this establishment. And not that the roads were tight, but it was just different. And again, this is in the daylight. I had a bus with the headlights that were pointing off into space at this point. I hadn't had a chance, didn't even know those were out of adjustment until I got here. And after hours check-in, so I was kind of on my own, but I did figure it out. It seemed like a really nice KOA, but I rolled in. It's 7 o'clock at night, I want to say. It was dark, and in an unfamiliar vehicle, in an unfamiliar place. And looking at the other pictures, this seems like a beautiful KOA, but I never got to see any of it. I basically found my spot, ran an extension cord, plugged in the heater that I bought, which turned out to be too small for my application. But I'm sure KOA would frown upon a bus idling all night, because it is very loud, I will say. So I didn't see much of this. I left by 6 o'clock in the morning. So again, it seems beautiful according to the pictures. From what I could see, the space was huge. Thank goodness. There was easily, once I could get to my spot, it was fine to get into. But no lights of any kind, and I didn't have reverse lights. So backing, I had a pull through, but trying to get aligned took some finesse without trying to take out a picnic table or something. So I hadn't mentioned it, but even on Friday, before I came out here, I started calling around trying to find a tire shop, a maintenance shop. That was kind of difficult. Tires weren't too bad. I did find this A&A Tires, and they said, yeah, we can accommodate you. Just come on in. I didn't really make a reservation or anything, but true to their word, I got up from the KOA, came out here first thing in the morning just as they opened, and they took me right in. So I was real happy with that. This was also the first time I really pulled out the GoPro other than a couple small little clips here and there, to record the bus. So this was the actual first recording of the bus I did. And unfortunately, I didn't get much better. Just it was a lot of stress bringing this thing across the country is about all I can say. No major events, but still just every little thing was an issue. Compounded, I should say. It really wasn't bad, but there was just a lot on my mind, I guess. So I didn't film as much as I really wished I would have. And it's made putting this together very difficult because I don't have footage of so much.
Well, here we are, getting our tires changed. Day one of the extravaganza. Big shout out to A&A Tires in Harrisonburg, Virginia, for taking us on a walk-in basis and giving us a pretty screaming deal on some tires.
So after getting tires on the bus, the next order of business was to try and get some maintenance done. And I needed fuel. So I came to the Pilot here in Harrisonburg and filled up the bus, which that's a large tank, but made several phone calls to different places in Harrisonburg and kind of on the way home. Nobody could really get me in, or nobody really wants to work on a bus is what it really comes down to. The one shop that was willing to do it said they could get me in on the 26th. Now, mind you, it's the 11th. And Christmas was coming, so that really wasn't an option. So I sat in here at this truck stop, weighing my options, and decided we're just going to do a full redneck send. And checked the fluids one more time, topped everything off, crossed my fingers and hoped for the best, and set the old GPS to point me starting to go home. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my route was going to change several times. But initially, I was heading down in through Tennessee, and I ended up, for this leg of the trip, going to Clarksville, somewhere in Tennessee. Now, mind you, there was some severe weather coming in right behind me, which kind of is going to influence the trip a little later on. But at this point, I just decided I wanted to get home. You know, I'm half terrified because I'm in a bus that I really can't fix on the side of the road. Even a tire change is going to be bad. Now, keep in mind, I did prepare as best I could. I have a service through CoachNet, which is kind of like the AAA for RVs. Spoiler, I didn't have to use them on the trip, but I did have to use them once I got home. However, I had that assurance that at least if I did break down, I could get it towed. But, you know, you really don't want to break down with a 45-foot vehicle anywhere. And I knew I was going to have some things happen. It's just inevitable. Part of the reason I did like this bus, the miles were not tremendously low, but you don't want something that has stupid low mileage because that means it's been sitting. And a sitting vehicle will have far more problems than a vehicle with high mileage. So this was kind of the middle of the two. But with COVID and everything, I knew the bus had not been used a lot. The owner said they would routinely start it up. They did take it on a few trips over the previous year. So I was just really hopeful that she was going to make it. And like I say, at this truck stop is where I kind of had the epiphany of it's either going to make it or it won't. So that's where we started heading back west. So as I said before, my plan kind of went to hell early on. I just knew I needed to go west. So I just punched in my home address and started following the GPS. And there's not too many east to west roads directly from this top part of Virginia. So it just dropped me down. I know I stopped a couple times for fuel, but this was day one of owning the bus, day 3 of this endeavor. And it basically took me all the way through Clarksville, Tennessee, which is also a beautiful state. I don't know how it is to live there, but it was very well kept from what I could see. Now, mind you, I'm only on the interstate. But we did travel through until we get to Clarksville, and I don't even know what time it was. One thing about this trip is there wasn't a lot of long rest periods. I was, I guess, more afraid to stop because something might break. I don't know how to explain it. I just wanted to get going. At least on this one here, I just wanted to start chipping away because I knew I'm clear on the other side of the state. So we just went for it. So this was the completion point for my first leg. I'm sure I crossed date, time zone things, but and again, this picture, I arrived here at night, like really late at night. In fact, I'm gonna just go ahead and call it like early morning. I want to say it was about 2 in the morning, and it was cold. And this was the point where the driver's fan that runs the heat quit, so I didn't have any heat really to speak of other than the little portable heater I bought. It runs on 110, so we had to test the theory: could the bus's inverter run my heater while I caught some Z's? Because I was trying to save as much money as I could, and hotels can get a little expensive, and I couldn't lock the bus because the door didn't lock. So I just decided we're going to stay in a truck stop, and it was cold enough that I didn't dare turn the bus off because 10-degree weather and diesel engines, especially of the era mine is, there's no glow plugs. It can get a little ugly. You try to start those. They do have a heater in the air cleaner. Don't know if mine works. Still don't know if it works. So we just left the bus running, and I did plug in my little space heater, and it worked enough. Obviously, I didn't freeze to death. So this was the end of day 1 of driving. So this picture might be a little bit of an exaggeration. It's not mine. It's from NOAA. But that's kind of how this day went. This was the day things went sideways. No major bus issues, but I got up from Clarksville, Tennessee. Kind of the same thing. I knew there was some weather, I don't want to say behind me because it was below me and it was heading towards me. So this is where I decided to start heading towards the upper path across, going through Colorado, Kansas, those kind of things. My initial plan was to dive south and cut across that way, but there was some pretty significant storms going on, and I didn't want to deal with that in the bus. So I started heading kind of northwest instead of just west or southwest, and things started happening. First off, we're going to call it the Great Wiper Search task. Trying to find wipers for this bus was I never did find them, to be honest, but we started hitting some serious rain, heavy winds. At first I was thinking I was having some kind of an alignment problem because the bus was just handling terrible. I don't want to say compared to what it was doing. It wasn't until I finally stopped for fuel and stepped out and realized the wind gusts were, probably 40, 50 miles an hour, which with the profile of the bus, well, that makes sense why it was all over the road. So I was having the wind, and then I was having tons of rain, no wipers. I stopped probably 6-7 times within, I'll say, 100 miles or so, just trying to find what wipers that would fit this thing, and no luck. Finally, I had the epiphany. Well, I've got wipers up on the upper windshield that I'm not using, and even if they suck, they've still got to be better than the one that fell apart on the driver's window. So I did cannibalize that. I got that fixed, but then there's going to be a little snapshot of a McDonald's. I stopped to grab something to eat. It was in the afternoon, pouring rain, and I liked this. It was a McDonald's kind of out by itself, and I figured, okay, this will be easy to park the bus. So I left it running, and I stepped out of the bus, forgetting that the bus was running. I don't want to say forgetting, but there's a difference. So when I pushed the door closed, I forgot to lock it in the open position. So once I got it closed, it latched shut with the bus running, my phone inside the bus, and I realized I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I have no way to call anybody, and the bus is running, and it's getting dark, and it's pouring rain. So I basically solved that little issue by walking a little ways up to a Shell station and bought a screwdriver, and came back, finished punching the lock. The lock had already been punched. Like I'd mentioned, there's no way to lock this bus because somebody else apparently locked themselves out. So after about an hour of messing around with everything I could think of, I finally was able to open the bus. Later, when I was removing the wrap, I found the exterior switch that I could have just used to open the door. But that's not going to help me in the middle of nowhere. So this turned out to be a pretty long day, and I didn't make too much driving progress. But it was just a day. Let's put it that way. It was bad enough that I decided I'm not sleeping in the bus this night. We went and got a hotel in a town remotely, adequately named Boonville, because that's where I felt I was in the middle of the boons. But there was a truck stop and a hotel right next to it, so I knew I could park the bus with it unlocked and it would be relatively safe, and I could go get some sleep in the hotel room, which conveniently overlooked the truck stop, so I felt I could check on the bus, but I never did. Once I hit that bed, that was it. It was game over. Well, it's Wednesday morning. I'm in the middle of nowhere, somewhere outside of Kansas City, about 90 miles outside of Kansas City. Sorry I haven't been recording much. It's been kind of a wild ride so far. Anyhow, we are getting ready to get this day started. Let's head on over to the bus, see what's cracking.
Sorry for the noise, loud noises. But she's still here. Well, there it is in all its glory. Sorry for a mess, but this has been an experience. Anyhow, we're going to go check the oil, get this thing started, and see what happens. Alright, so here we are sitting in the driver's seat of the bus in a Walmart. Let's just start off with saying we found the speedometer doesn't work. It shows 10 miles an hour no matter how fast you're going. All the other gauges seem to work. Bus starts right up. Don't know what 80% of these buttons do. So as much as I've tried to research, there's something here with a harpoon and a swinging door, and now some bitch is coming over here. Alright, sorry for the interruption. The usual, do you have any money? Anyhow, figured out the cruise control. It works. Don't know what this thing does. I don't know if I'm opening up somebody's garage door opener with this. No matter what I do, if the bus is running or not, that just does nothing, and it looks like it's about ready to fall off. So maybe it will. Alright. So, about an hour ago, we had to fix the door. Well, we didn't fix it. And I'm not talking about this mess. The trim cap right here came off. Well, it didn't come off. It was flapping around, scared the hell out of me. I needed to change my pants after that one. This lovely thing here was somebody was already getting into it, and I did manage to lock myself out of the bus yesterday. Was able to punch the lock, but normally, after all the research I read, the only way to get in if that door locks is to call a window tech and have them pull the windshield out. So luckily that didn't happen. Front tires were good. They were all new. Taking a little tour down the side, seeing if anything else. I did have to fix a couple marker lights. I got all new tires on the back. Can't tell by looking. Everything looks okay here, other than the hideous wrap. No drama over on this side either. Looks pretty bussy. But that's about the only drama we've had so far, is the mostly with the door on the wipers. Try and find wipers for these side-to-side things. The truck stops don't sell them because nobody makes these kind of wipers anymore. Even the new buses have some new fancy thing. So, all right, well, that's the walk around.
So not but a couple of hours after that last clip, the weather turned really nasty. It just went to shit. Ice, snow, winds, you name it. It was Armageddon. I pulled into a pilot to fuel up, and there was so much ice. When I tried to stop at the fuel pump, I kept going, and had to revert to long lost driving in icy snow conditions experience. Because, like I say, I was sliding right into a row of semi trucks. So, and that was just the beginning of a shit show, for lack of a better term. So, as I said earlier, 70 was out, completely closed. 80 was technically open, but it was ice. The whole road was red, according to Wyoming's little chart. So it was ice pretty much all the way past Salt Lake City, and without chains, it just was not worth it to me because the weather was still there. So at any point in time, even though the road was technically open, it could close at any second. And just from the traffic cams I was looking at, I really had no interest in taking this bus across the top on Interstate 80. So we made another diversion south. The whole time I'm kicking myself for not staying south, because this added another day to the whole trip. But, no sense crying over spilled milk. I couldn't find any chains, so we headed south. Temperature didn't improve any. Even when I got down into Albuquerque, it was 20 degrees, but at least there wasn't snow on the road. It was clear and sunny. I took a picture of me out in front of the bus, and it looked like Southern California tropical weather, but it was 23 degrees when that picture was taken. So, but at least the roads were clear, so that was the new plan of attack. So I forgot to mention, in Denver, I lost probably a third of the day chasing tire chains, chasing open roads, because I started to head north on 25 because I saw that the road was open, but I also saw chains required in some sections of a nearby highway. So I pulled over after about an hour of driving north and really dug into the traffic cam footage and saw what the conditions were truly like on Interstate 80. So then I dove back down south, and in part of that, I took a road that was basically to put me on 70, which is I didn't want to be on, so then I had to divert back east. So I lost a good 3 hours just fiddle farting around in Denver before I finally was able to dive south on 25. Like I say, the roads were clear, the sun was out, a little bit of a cloud cover, but nothing terrible. But with all that, by the time I rolled into the Albuquerque North KOA, it was dark, and I did my after-hours check-in. Map was a little confusing, though. I I made the reservations at the KOA for the big boy sites, as they call them, because it's a big boy. But apparently I read the map wrong, because I walked it, found what I thought was the area, started driving in there, and then kind of got myself pinched in where I couldn't go forwards or backwards. Luckily, the park manager happened to come by, and I reluctantly allowed her to help me. She offered earlier, but I was like, "No, I got this. I'm a man, whatever." So she helped me go in. I did drive over a railroad tie a little bit, kind of dislodged it, but fixed that. But again, it was dark. I didn't get any work done on the bus that I'd planned. I'd hoped to be down here by 5, and it was 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It was cold. Decided I was going to go take a shower because the last time I'd showered was in the hotel room, which was only 2 days before. But yeah, so went and took a nice hot shower. Came back, fired up the heater, which I did get another bigger space heater, which was more than adequate. It kept that bus toasty warm. But yeah, I stayed there and got up at 7 o'clock and headed out for the next leg of the journey. So this leg was the final push. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to drive the whole thing or not. I didn't drive the whole thing. I did stop in Kingman, Arizona. Took about a 2-hour, 3-hour cat nap at the pilot truck stop there, which one thing I will say I've noticed on this whole adventure, and I've never noticed it before, at least in California, Oregon, Washington side, truck stops are full after 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I mean full. So if you're wanting to spend the night at a truck stop, pretty much anywhere on the South Corridor, you better park it by 7 o'clock if you want a decent spot. Even in Kingman, I took a reserve spot. Don't know if I bumped somebody out or not, but I was so tired I didn't care. I figured, they'll come beat on my door and I'll be on my way, because I knew I was only going to stay a few hours. But yeah, we went from Albuquerque through Kingman up Southern California, hit some major fog coming through Tehachapi. Coming down the grade was luckily there was a truck in front of me. I figured, well, he'll run into something before I do, because I was definitely driving by braille at that point. My headlights were decent, but they weren't optimized, so I really couldn't see much of anything. And that fog continued all the way up through Fresno, up into Modesto. It wasn't until I got just into Stockton that the fog finally let up. And one thing I will tell you, don't drive with your 4-ways on in the fog. You're just making it worse. I understand the thought concept, but you're not getting much more warning out there, and you're just blinding the other folks behind you. So at any rate, this was the final push, and I did stop in Sac, pick up the wife. Well, she tailed me up to Redding, to where this bus is going to finish this little project. Well, there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. This definitely was a lot longer of a video considering I had so little footage, but I wanted to tell the full story as best I could because this video was mostly for those that knew I was embarking on this adventure. From this point forward, my intent is to kind of chronicle my experience redoing this bus. I will try and take much better footage just in case there's somebody out there with a Prevost that can see basically what they're going to get into with my successes and failures. So anyhow, once again, thanks for watching.